Hi, my name is Dwayne Gathers, and welcome to CivitasLA, where we feature diverse and emerging leaders who make up this dynamic region and are creating community every day and building a better tomorrow. In these bi-weekly conversations, we hear from, learn from, and are inspired by a new generation of civic entrepreneurs who are forging a path forward in making our greater Los Angeles region a stronger, more resilient, and connected group of citizens. Now, more than ever, we aim to elevate civic discourse, foster community connections, and promote civic knowledge and engagement across our region, while elevating diverse and emerging voices in this conversation. So let's kick off today's conversation. As we celebrate Black History Month this February 2021, we're really delighted to have a number of amazing guests to inspire us. Starting with Hal and Bettye Walker. With a career in science and technology that spans over half a century, Hal Walker is the perfect person to mentor young students with a particular emphasis on science and mathematics. In 1986, Professor Walker and his dear wife, Dr. Bettye Walker, founded the African American Male Achievers Network. And some years later, in 1997, at the invitation of former South African President Nelson Mandela, Hal and Bettye established the nonprofit in South Africa and founded the first national space society on the African continent, the Cape Town Space Society, headquartered in Cape Town, South Africa. Hal was appointed to be a JPL NASA Solar System Ambassador in 2000, where he participates as a speaker and specialist in space-related technology issues. His responsibilities are promoting public education and development of local community awareness and benefits regarding space technology and deep space future exploration. Aside from his work at JPL in Pasadena, Professor Hal and Dr. Bettye Walker are 25-year Rotarian members of the Downtown Los Angeles Rotary Club. They have developed partnerships with the Rotary Clubs in Cape Town and Pretoria, South Africa, as well as coordinated the establishment of more than a dozen state-of-the-art computer literacy labs in schools throughout South Africa. So on behalf of CivitasLA, we are absolutely delighted to have these two amazing human beings with us today, calling in all the way from Cape Town, South Africa. And on a personal note, I'm happy to say that in a previous role that I had working and living in South Africa, I had the pleasure of meeting Bettye and Hal close to 23 years ago. So Hal and Bettye, welcome to CivitasLA.
Thank you, Dwayne. Glad to be here.
Great to be here.
So while we know you're calling in from about 11,000 miles or so, we know you got both a longtime Angelinos. And since this is a podcast about the greater Los Angeles region featuring insights from people like yourselves, we want to have a few lightning round questions where we get to look at your Los Angeles. So are you ready?
Yes.
Ready, set, go.
Okay. Favorite restaurant or two in the region? Bettye.
Crustaceans in Beverly Hills and Nick and Steps.
Okay.
And how about Burger King? No. And also, never let us forget our community hamburger, Fat Burgers.
Fat Burgers, got it. Favorite watering hole?
Morton's in Palm Desert.
Oh, wow, okay. Hal, you want to add to that?
Fridays. We go to Fridays.
Okay, TGI Fridays. Okay. Share with us your favorite place to take a visitor to Los Angeles.
Santa Monica Pier, and after wandering around there, then end up eating a good meal at Lobster House.
Yes.
Share with us a favorite hidden LA gem that our guests and our audience wouldn't know.
Well, this is a good one. Mozambique Restaurant in Laguna. And it reminds us of the good food we get in Cape Town because the owner is from Cape Town.
Yes.
Indeed. Outdoors is a huge favorite for a lot of Angelinos and visitors. So share with us your favorite park or hike in Los Angeles.
Pond Park.
Yep, near us.
Right where we are.
Yep, it's around the corner. Can't beat that.
Okay. LA is blessed with just folks from all over the world, and street food is a huge part of the Los Angeles culture. Share with us your favorite street food.
Louisiana Harold and Bells.
Yes, that's one. That's good. That's a good one.
Well, I'm just gonna digress here and say that I think when I moved from San Francisco down to Los Angeles in 2004, I think one of my first meals in LA was with the two of you, and we went to Harold and Bell. So I thought you were
It
gonna.
was.
It was.
Got a good
I
memory.
remember that.
Oh, wow.
Share with us your favorite neighborhood.
Baldwin
All
Hills.
the hills.
Can't go wrong.
Where we live.
Bettye and Hal, thank you so much. That was great. I appreciate that. So let's begin our conversation today. So, Hal, let's start with a little bit of your backstory, which is so fascinating. And for our audience, I really encourage you to go to the episode notes on our website and on the podcast platforms and to really get a greater sense of this extraordinary history. But, Hal, you were the lead laser technologist on the historic Apollo 11 moon landings lunar laser ranging experiment back in 1969. Take us back a little bit and share with us a little bit about your formative years and how did you end up being involved in these historic events?
Well, Dwayne, I want to start with as a young man growing up in Louisiana, I really was quite excited about being involved with technology. I had the experience of being around a shop in my neighborhood where folk were working with electric motors and things like that. So as a young man, I started thinking I knew something about that kind of stuff. And of course, it piqued my interest. Later, of course, I was in the military later, and I graduated from high school, where I went into the Navy and served aboard an aircraft carrier as an electrician's mate. And of course, there I further enhanced my skills around electricity and electronics at that time. And when I retired there, I went to school, learned more about electronics, and got involved with radar technology. Well, of course, the laser, I'd just like to point out, to just jump ahead for a moment, was invented in 1960 by a friend of mine, Dr. Ted Mayman. So I was able to join that company in 1964. And as a laser specialist, I was involved with the lunar laser ranging experiment that we completed in 1969.
Wow. So when did you know you wanted to be a scientist?
I think I always kind of wanted to be involved with technology, I would say. I became a scientist as my skill grew and I was able to get accepted into things. Because we have to remember back in those days, this is the 50s and 60s, African Americans weren't that welcomed into the scientific areas.
Sure.
And of course, the aerospace industry was a new emerging industry. And of course, I found a niche there, and I was able to work with people that did give me an opportunity to become involved in scientific discovery.
No, and certainly I think, World War II and post-World War II, Southern California was just certainly the LA area was just a hotbed of aerospace technology activity. So certainly as we celebrate Black History Month this month of February 2021, you're clearly a pioneer in this field. So share with us some of the challenges you faced at that time and how did you overcome those barriers?
Well, I always found when my interest was very peaked toward a particular area of science that I'd like to get involved in, I would go to companies and fill out applications. And of course, I would be discouraged by them telling me most likely there won't be a spot for you. Okay. And I'd say, well, why not? Well, you didn't score very high on the test. And they never showed you the test, so you didn't really know what that meant. But that was a way of kind of getting rid of us in those days. But I always remembered one thing I learned from my mother about that: keep going back, make yourself sort of somebody they see coming. So they start really asking you, hey, what is it we can do for you? Then you say, hey, I'm looking to become involved. And I always set the example and say, I want to be involved. And of course, that opened up certain doors for me. I'll give an example of my first job, which is always kind of a funny story tied to that.
Okay.
I just got out of the Navy in 1955. And I was home on leave, waiting for me to decide whether I was going to go back in or permanently get discharged. A friend calls me up and says, hey, Al, I need a ride over to Douglas Aircraft Company. My car's not working today. You're not busy. Will you mind taking me? So I said, sure. So we drive over to Douglas Aircraft Company there in El Segundo. This would have been back in 1955. And he gets out, I park in the parking lot, and he gets out and goes into the employment office. And I'm just sort of sitting there twiddling my thumbs. And finally, I see all these airplanes stacked up down in the other area of the factory there. And I said, oh, they build airplanes here too. Wow, Navy planes. And I just come out of the Navy working on naval aircraft. So I decided to go inside the employment office and just look around, just see what I could see. I wasn't looking for a job, but I decided I wanted to read books and whatever. So I went inside and I'm sitting there, and pretty soon a gentleman opens the door and says, "Next." And he looks at me, and I look around in the room like, I tell you, I'm not looking for a job. He says, "What?" So he comes out and says, "Well, what are you doing there?" I said, "Well, I just got out of the Navy. I'm waiting to see when I'm going to go back in." He said, "Come here, let me talk with you." And the rest is history, Wayne.
Wow. So that's a solid 50 plus years ago. So I'm curious to learn, what changes have you seen over your lifetime, and how have opportunities evolved for communities of color in the broader science and technology fields, and more specifically space technology?
I had the fortunate benefit again to get involved with technology in the very early stages. And of course, you're able to make a name for yourself, not necessarily for yourself, become a part of that technical achievement. So in 1959, I was recruited to come to RCA Corporation and to be a part of the team that built the first radar ballistic missile warning system in the world. Mm-hmm. And of course, from that, it gave me a lot of experience with high-powered discharge systems because of the large radars we were using. Then when I came home, looking around again for where I would get connected, I found out the need in laser technology for people with experience in that field.
Okay.
I went over and applied, and the rest is history.
Wow. That's great. So you had a very distinguished career in the space technology area, and it was only after you retired did you and Dr. Bettye start AMAN, African American Male Achievers Network. So I'm curious to know, what led you and Bettye to start that, and what were you seeing or really not seeing in terms of the educational landscape here in the region. And I'm going to start with Dr. Bettye because I want you to introduce your background because, at the time, you were involved in education in Southern California. So share with our audience a bit about your education background, Bettye.
I grew up in Washington, D.C., went to Howard University and the University of District Columbia simultaneously to get 2 degrees, a degree in music and a degree in education and philosophy. Went to UCLA, came back to D.C., taught at Howard University, and knew I needed to be back in the beautiful L.A. weather, and came back to L.A. and started working at the Human Relations Commission of the City of LA, and then went on to Pomona and taught at the school district there and worked in the administration and taught at Cal Poly Pomona and UCLA in the evenings.
Oh, amazing. So, you've had this, Hal's got this science background, you've got this education background. So I'm curious to know what you were seeing or not seeing in the educational landscape that, got you guys motivated to set this up.
I knew the importance of science. I knew that if you have science under your belt, you can get anything done. And because that's your math, that's your comprehension. And so there was a void everywhere in the public school systems that I saw. And I knew that had to change. And I was in a coup in in Lagos, as a matter of fact, and came back with my life, which I had no idea I would ever see life again. And I knew I needed to devote my days to children. And that's when I applied to be an elementary principal so that I could make sure I knew at least some children who were going to get the science and math and engineering technology background that they needed in order to forge ahead and be ready for the 21st century.
And tell us about the genesis of AMAN. I know it started with support from UCLA back in 1986, but it became an official organization in 1991. So tell us about the early years of this project.
As an elementary principal at Ralph Bunche Elementary in Carson, there was a businessman who was near the school who had money that he gave to UCLA and said he wanted to donate before he left this world to a prominent project. And the superintendent recommended that I go out and meet with the vice chancellor. And I told him I had something that would be wonderful. And I needed to develop it though. So they let me come out on campus with my leadership team from my school, and we developed the project called BMAP, Black Male Achievers Project. And the focus was science. Mm-hmm. And that's how we got started. And role models came only because Mayor Bradley was my first role model who brought over 100 role models into the school in the 2-year project. And then as a result of the project ending with national awards and attention, Hal and I said, we can't let this stop. And we started AMAN and met at Mayor Bradley's office, and he was our founding board member. And AMAN is for a man and a woman. So we've had boys and girls go through the program
all these years.
So give us a sense of what you were trying to achieve in the formation of the African American Male Achievers Network, and what are some of the key programs that you've offered over the years?
The basic program was set up so that males and females would be able to come somewhere after school and on weekends and have role models to work with them to support their interest and training in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, using hands-on activities, getting them involved, putting their hands to work, putting their minds to work.
And of course, I added to that, Dwayne, I was the technology developer for the program. So I had the types of tools and development programs needed for them to make those attachments. For example, I had a laser laboratory, we had the computer laboratory, and of course, we had an astronomy club that we also created out of our technology center.
Okay, and I'm curious to know, Bettye, you've been in the LAUSD, Pomona Unified School District, and also Compton Unified School District. So I'm curious to know what you saw as the state of science and technology education at that time, particularly, in those districts, and, was there interest on the part of community kids of color to participate in those programs?
There was a lack of educational opportunities in those areas, in those districts. Mm-hmm. And what I say about the students having interest, if you don't have exposure, you can't have interest. So my idea was you will be exposed and you will have the interest. And we had the kids, all the kids were just excited because the technique was hands-on, not someone standing up, pointing out numbers and things to you, but giving you the opportunity to put your hands to work and put your mind to work. And all of those kids just blossomed and were so excited about what they were learning.
And we did competitions, of course,
yes.
Where they went out and demonstrated their experiments.
We had competitions and had students involved. When we started, the second year we started AMAN, we had students compete in national competitions, and the number one student in math came from our program. And when we would travel around with the sororities and fraternities, they would say, that's that AMAN group. We're going to beat them next year.
Okay. So let's talk about, AMAN, which has been in existence since 1991, and you've got a number of key programs. So share with our audience, let's talk briefly about a number of these programs. You've got the AMAN Virtual Reality Academy. Tell us about that, Hal.
Well, one of the things that evolved as far as technology was concerned was VR, virtual reality. And of course, so we introduced VR to our students, to our youngsters in the program, to some of our graduates who had already gone through the program, who were now actually working in the fields of virtual technology, virtual reality. Mm-hmm. And one of them was in the VR of Jurassic Park.
As a matter of fact, they recruited him when he was 16 years old.
Yes.
He was so talented.
Oh, wow. That's great.
But anyway, to get back to the point, Dwayne, when they came into our center, recognizing once they were students sitting there themselves, they wanted to give these kids just an amazing look and experience with VR. So they created a program where you were going to fly to Mars in the AMAN rocket ship, which of course you can see online as part of our program in VR, landing on Mars and carrying out experiments there.
Excellent. And then let's talk about this Global Learning X Prize that you have as well. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Well, one of the things I think we, as a community, we've got to be on the lookout to get involved with educational programs and development where there's large monetary value to help you to build a network and to build your enterprise. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, working with that program, we were able to get our system to be known as part of the competition. I think we finished third.
We were one of the finalists.
We were one of the finalists.
The two
Okay.
finalists.
Well, one of the two finalists in that program to create a global network for learning, internet learning. Yes.
Oh, wow. That's great. And then you've got your Saturday After School Academy, which I'm familiar with. Tell us about that.
Well, the Saturday Academy is a part of what we call our weekend programs. And so on Saturdays, students are able to come in from 9 to 1 in groups, small groups. The one thing that makes all of these kids successful and achievers is the fact that I have no more than 15 in a class. And in addition to the Saturday Academy, then we have the After School Academy so that they can come every day after school, different schools and different groups of students from different areas. And so we do the same thing, have 4 or 5 groups of only 12 to 15 students at a time. And our components we have are for parents and role models.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, Bettye, that probably speaks to the ongoing educational debate about the importance of class sizes in terms of giving kids the sort of attention that they need.
Yeah, that's why we had success.
Yeah. Tell us about the STEM international technology education programs.
Well, one of the things that we learned as part of the evolution and the continuing perpetuation of the AMAN science program is that all of a sudden science programs were now being called STEM programs, where before we were just called science programs, science labs, so forth and so on. But so quickly we had to adapt our program to be a model of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And of course, we were one of the first in LA to have a community-based STEM program, as you know. Well, that became now the attraction of many of our fraternities, for example, such as Kappa Alpha Psi, the AKAs,
Okay.
sororities. And of course, we were able to put programs within those fraternities and sororities that carried on those STEM programs.
And if I could add,
Please.
The Department of Education in Washington started a program called Lights On After School, and they had a competition. And AMAN was selected as the first winner of the Lights After School programs in the country. And so from that was another component we added. So once a year in the fall, we would have what we call a Lights On After School competition program for all the students in the area throughout LA County. And then we would bring everybody to our building and we'd have a big, maybe about 500-600 kids on our parking lot grounds showing off their projects that they had developed for that.
And visits to NASA at JPL.
That's right.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So this is all going back to, so let's say 1991. So over the years, how's the program evolved, and how many young men have you been able to work with over these years? How many how big is this AMAN community now out there?
Well, the Lights On After School comes up into the 2016, 17, starting in 2010. And over the years, we have been able to monitor that we've had close to 100,000 kids that have come through the program.
Wow.
And throughout the country.
Wow.
And after we got international, I mean, it's say we've hit probably another 20, 30,000 kids.
Yeah, South Africa.
And the main thing is that in the components originally that I mentioned, we had a role model component and we had a parent component. The children had parents who understood what they were doing because I made the parents come and learn. And they had role models to help them where the parents couldn't help them. And so now we have children who came to the 50th anniversary for the Apollo 11 year before last, and they brought their children.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure. Well, I'm sure. I'm sure that you have inspired a lot of young boys who've gone on to great success. And I'm just curious if there are any specific success stories that you can share with our audience.
Well, I'll start with Chris. Chris lived not far from the center where we first started.
Chris Walker.
And he received a scholarship to Harvard
Oh, wow. Okay.
and went on to complete his bachelor's, then went to the University of Pennsylvania and got his master's, and then went back and got his PhD, and right now he's teaching at Caltech.
Oh,
And he went
interesting.
there on scholarship to Harvard.
That's
I mean,
great.
that's one good one. And
One great
there
one,
there's Chris, who grew up in the neighborhood as well, and he graduated from Howard in computer technology, and he travels. He's right now in Australia, I think. He travels all over the world for one of the big technology companies.
Financial institutions.
Yes.
Okay.
And our young lady who received our Lifetime Achievement Award for Young Ladies, she is a Deputy Chief Executive Director of LA Ports.
Okay.
She graduated from Stanford with honors. She went on to Wharton Business School with honors, and she is over the largest port in North America.
Oh, that's outstanding. And I am sure there are countless others. So this is amazing work.
Yeah, it goes
The
on
list
and on.
goes on and on. Those are some of the people we'd like to highlight.
Sure.
And they come back and they
come
work
back
with the
and work with
students.
us, yes.
And that makes it nice. And what we've done is the original research, when I completed the project at UCLA, stated, do not keep this in one place because it's too important. It's too global for that. So we started replicating, and we have chapters in Seattle, in Portland, in Fredericksburg, Maryland, and South Africa, of course, and Los Angeles, and middle schools and the colleges want to start their center. They want to start a Hal and Bettye Walker Center at LA Southwest College. Yeah, so replication is key.
Well, that's what I want to get to next, actually, because you guys have done such great work here in Los Angeles. You've expanded this nationally, but I really do want to talk about and touch on how you've expanded this globally because, I recall meeting you both in South Africa, I believe in 1997, when you participated on a South Africa studies tour, and I was living and working there. So, share with us how A-Man in South Africa came about.
Well, I can start by, and I'll let Bettye tell the story about Mandela. But we came to South Africa as part of a delegation from, at that time, Congresswoman Diane Watson, who came to us and said, hey, let's put together a project to take kids to South Africa, and we want to take your A-Man students. And of course we did, and that leads to the story with President Mandela.
Bettye
can tell that.
Yeah,
Bettye, you want to chime in?
3 years. She was a senator, and we came 3 years with her on her study tour, on her meetings. And so my students would look at all of the information we'd bring back. And every year we took our students somewhere on a great trip to study. And they had been to 3 shuttle launches, and they were interviewed by one of the NBC stations when we got back from seeing Bernard Harris become the first African American to walk in space. And he wrote a message to our program from up there. And so they asked the students, well, where are you going next? And so one of the students said, oh, Dr. Walker's taking us to South Africa. And I went, really? And afterwards, we talked with the parents, and they thought that was a great idea. And so we started fundraising, and we got help from the South African Consul General with funds, and we were able to bring 12 students and had the opportunity to meet with President Mandela. And he only had 15 minutes. And when he looked at the children, he said, you brought these little children? I said, well, their parents are on the bus. He said, but still, to bring these small kids this far away. I said, well, I know you only have 15 minutes, so they'll just introduce themselves. And the same young man started out, Raheem, and he introduced himself, and he says, look, I've been to 3 shuttle launches, and I can tell you all the things that we've learned about space. And others just started, and he said, wait a minute, cancel my next appointment. And he spent an hour and a half with us and those kids. And he looked at us with his deputy and brought them all in and took a picture and said, look, Hal and Bettye, do you promise to come back next year and make students like this in South Africa like you have in America? And that changed our lives
changed our
forever.
lives forever.
Of course, we had to say yes.
Of
And we had to
course.
figure out how to do it.
Right.
But anyhow, God helped us.
That's amazing. And so you went on to set up the first National Space Society on the African continent, which is called the Cape Town Space Society. So when did you set this up, and what role is it playing in advancing science education in South Africa?
Well, one of the things that, Dwayne, is so important right now is the future of space exploration, right? And of course, we're now working with the thing called off-world enterprises and such. So our youngsters have got to get involved in learning what these are about. For example, I think I once mentioned to you in a conversation that there's now asteroids out in space now orbiting with more platinum on them of a pure condition than what we have here on the Earth. That's a resource that we're trying to get our hands on.
Okay.
Those become part of those growing off-world enterprises. So that behind that scene, we started talking to young folk here in South Africa, and they wanted to learn more about this. And of course, we partnered with some of the technology companies here in South Africa, and we formed what's now become the National Space Society's Cape Town Space Society. And of course, we're teaching the kids about space, exploration of space, and of course technology for propulsion systems, new propulsion systems that would drive the spacecraft of the future, such as ion engines and that sort of thing. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And how is the work or your approach to this work differed from your work in Los Angeles to how you're carrying out this work in South Africa? What are the differences, if any?
I think I'd like to characterize it as such. We started out with the space program in America with the space shuttle and the evolution of the International Space Station. Now we're talking about off-planet or off-world enterprises. So now the Cape Town Space Society is that next generation.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of working with the students, where we started with a center in Los Angeles. Here, we started with schools. Mm-hmm. We actually put the program in the schools because there was such a great need.
Yes.
So that's the main difference of how we started here. And as a result of implementing the Cape Town Space Society, we meet on Saturdays with those students so that they have the time and energy to get into this new, exciting space area.
Sure. And how many students are you working with usually in Cape Town or across South Africa?
We have five high schools here, and 2 middle schools. So probably in Cape Town alone, we have probably about, I would say, 1,000 kids.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. And tell me, overall, how's your work been received in South Africa?
Overwhelmingly.
Overwhelming.
As a matter of fact, we base our work in the last 10 years in Cape Town because this is where we spend the time. But we're now working with requests to go into other areas of the country.
Oh,
and we want to use the Cape Town Space Society as that vehicle to replicate it in other areas of the country. And then we've even had requests from other countries.
Mm-hmm. And how do we always talk about the opportunity to forge partnerships, and we always want to talk about collaboration. So how do you see the future? Are there any future collaboration opportunities between the work that you're doing in Los Angeles and the work that you're doing in South Africa?
I think what we would like to remind folk is that we're a youth program as such. And the folks that mostly are attracted to us is those organizations who want to have an outreach program. So that kind of gives us a little bit of a limited community of interest. But the point is that these folk are willing to spend money to help develop the technologies of the future, recognizing that these youth are learning and experiencing some of these emerging technology areas. But it's our job, Bettye and I, to go out and let these particular scientific companies within these countries know what we're doing and sit down and meet with their leadership. And of course, our partners that we work with, for example, Rotarians, that as you know, we've been Rotarians ourselves for over 20 years, where we meet with a vast network of international people as part of our organizational infrastructure. So we use those types of catalysts, we'll call it, to develop contacts.
And in addition, when we opened up the Cape Town Space Society 2 years ago, we put the invitation out for people to come from the U.S. And so we had people come from the East Coast, we had people come from Los Angeles, we had 20 people that came in. And then what they've done is made themselves parts of committees in their cities to keep in touch and to bring support. And we were supposed to have the second group come this past year, but the virus, of course, stopped it. But that's one way, by inviting others to come in and see what we're doing. They go back to LA and they go back to the East Coast, they go back to Washington, and they get excited about how they can bring support to bring this to more of a fruition.
Sure. So right there, let me ask you, since we always want to amplify the work that you're doing so that others can learn about it and be inspired about it and hopefully get involved with it. So share with us, how would others find you, and how can others get involved in the work that you're doing and to support this work?
Well, our website, www.capetownsspacesociety.org.za.
Okay.
And on that website, you have information about our AMAN sites in LA and the work that's going on here and how we can connect.
Excellent. Well, we'll make sure we have that in the episode notes as well. Well, this has been great. How, there's a lot of conversation around diversity and inclusion and equity. Share, your thoughts and insights and on the future of STEM, and how do we continue to, diversify and provide access to opportunities for communities of color in these exciting new fields?
Well, for example, I was thinking about that leading up to our talk tonight. And I thought one of the things I wanted to say to just remind people, President Barack Obama, as part of his administration, signed a proposed project for the future that Americans, if they were to go into space and find anything that they could claim as an element or any type of material, they could claim it for themselves. Well, of course, this is going to bring just a multitude of folk now that are interested in being involved in outer space travel. So get involved with space technology, get involved with off-world enterprises, read about what these things are about, watch JPL, NASA for those online programs they have where they're talking about space exploration, watch SpaceX, which is now the new emerging commercial leader in space technology. Those things really are building the future, and get to be a part of them.
No, that's great. Bettye and Hal, this has really been a great conversation, and we're really excited to learn about the work of AMAN and the successes of AMAN, and also the Cape Town Space Society. We certainly applaud you and the team you've assembled to carry out this important work, and you've left us with a lot to think about and act on. So I'm going to give you both the final word, since I know you're 10 time zones away. Final thoughts you'd like to share? Any calls to action for our listeners?
We just want to just say that there's no boundaries anymore to the things that we're trying to do. You want to change your focus. You want to change it. Let your vision be beyond the sky. Here's the universe. We want to go out and become a part of this new universal society.
Excellent.
And we always used to say the sky's the limit, but that is no longer. There is no limit when you think in terms of looking up at space and seeing everything that's there that you can explore.
That's outstanding. Bettye and Hal, this has been a great dialogue, and we really appreciate your work, and we appreciate your time, and we appreciate your service to this community and all communities that you're involved in. Hopefully we can have you on again and discuss the progress you're making, and we certainly look forward to seeing you both when you're back here safely in Los Angeles. And to our audience, thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we hope you'll share this with your friends and associates. And as we like to say, until we meet again, stay strong and get involved. To learn more about CivitasLA and share feedback on this program, or if you have a recommendation about future programs, please visit our website at www.civitasla.com. And if you do have time, we hope you also take our end-of-year listener survey to give us feedback on how we can improve in the year ahead. And also, please connect with us on Facebook at CivitasLA, Instagram at Civitas_LA, and Twitter at Civitas_LA. We appreciate you listening, and we hope you'll share this with others. Stay strong, get involved, and stay safe.